Good afternoon, everybody. Also, thank you, Sandra and Annette. I hope to be able to perform as well as you have. So, yeah, let's get started. So first, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues Remco and Joris that actually have done most of the work on this presentation. Basically speaking as a team lead sort of on their behalf. So, our event today is focused on CCS, but CCS should be also placed in the context of an energy transition. So maybe I'll go a little bit off topic in this presentation because what I'm really interested in is how do we achieve an energy transition and how is CCS sort of embedded in that transition. So we're trying to transform our sort of fossil fuel-based energy system into something more lower carbon. And I'm not sure how we're going to do this. I think in my sort of opinion as a non-specialist in this area, I think our energy system has evolved, new technologies appear, it starts somewhere, it's cheaper, better, more convenient, and then it sort of takes over the world. And this here is more of a much more global engineered approach that we need to take, and I think it's not easy. So how can we coordinate such activities? And I'm going to use the Dutch North Sea as an example and bring some examples of how we're trying to kind of achieve this. So the North Sea's got a very long history in our energy system, especially on the production of oil and gas, but we also have other industrial activities in that area. I mean, we do offshore sand mining, we've got fisheries, we have big ports, shipping lanes, we have nature areas, we have military no-go zones, and it's all kind of clustered in there. I'm wondering if I will dare to use the pointer. So the Netherlands is this very flat patch around there. Now, so what we're wanting, of course, is a new energy system that's secure, reliable, clean, which means low carbon, affordable. There are many stakeholders and interests, many industries in this area, and we're under time pressure. So how are we going to do this? I think the first thing that is useful to do is to identify the various energy functions, and in this case, things like electricity, hydrogen, CO2, natural gas, then design pathways on how we get from today to where we want to be, say, 2050, and based on those pathways, be able to put together like an action agenda, we're calling it, which is a list of what we should be doing, when, and who should be doing it. So the North Sea Energy Program is funded by the Dutch government and with contribution of industry partners. It is sort of a comprehensive innovation program, and we're trying to, we're using, let's say, at least a belief that by being able to connect smartly the various energy functions, we will be able to reduce costs, save some time, also ecological impacts, and reduce CO2 emissions. So this program also is a good platform to start discussions and initiate various pilot projects. Like there's one pilot project going on which is producing green hydrogen from an offshore former gas platform, just as sort of as an example. So the program includes these four elements. So we see electrons being produced by increasing offshore wind, hydrogen being produced, either blue or green. CO2, CCS will also be still an element far into our future. And there will still be natural gas production ongoing, but also the opportunity of using existing extensive natural gas infrastructure for integrating these other systems. So these are our partners. So there's almost 50 partners that are diverse stakeholders that go from energy companies, law firms, pipeline companies. So basically almost all stakeholders, and it's not shown there, but it also includes the general population, I would call it, into that. And the various aspects of this project is grouped together in these work packages, where we have the energy part, but we're also looking at society, governance and communications around this, safety and integrity and reliability of such a system, the ecology and environment, some logistical issues. Then we do a lot of mapping and modeling, and the ultimate goal is to produce such a roadmap about how to get to such an integrated energy system. So this here is an example of some of these elements. It's not so easy to read, but basically what you have is an example in which wind farm produces electrons. There's maybe a substation, an offshore platform that is electrified, still produces gas, and electrons and gas go to onshore. The one on the bottom here shows like the CCS part, where you have the CO2 coming from onshore or the ports to an offshore platform and then being stored either in depleted fields or in saline aquifers. We also have this other possibility in which our electrons then get converted to hydrogen on a platform, and hydrogen is then transported to onshore. And then there are other scenarios in which that hydrogen might temporarily be stored and then transported onshore. So what we do, we sort of take all of these elements and put them together, and that allows us to do some kinds of extensive modeling on all necessary aspects to see what that would look like. The idea then is that once you've grouped these elements together, you can then map them out, and what we get then are sort of hubs of energy system or systems or elements. And this is here a little bit a sort of an example of what that could look like, in which, so we have here, we have platforms, but we also are considering building new sand islands for instance, producing hydrogen, which is always the blue lines here that go into temporary storage or that go onshore, where you also can store it in salt caverns. We still have in red gas production, and then in the grey lines what you see is the CCS component of it. And by trying to place this on the map, we actually, for the Dutch North Sea, have defined 3 hubs, which is Hub West, Hub North, and Hub East. Each one has different combinations of those elements, and then they can be sort of studied and modelled, and pathways to this scenario can then be designed. And we can figure out things like the necessary infrastructure, what kinds of investments are necessary, and what timings could be possible. So we sort of have an idea about what's today, and then where we would like to be, let's say 2050, and then what we do to create the transition from one to the other is to build some, we call them storylines for each of the hubs. So in this case here, you see there's no gas production anymore, but there's hydrogen and still CCS and wind being produced. And depending on the scenario, you have sort of a different storyline. So for each hub, we create these storylines. And this here is just an example of the Hub West, where we've got it's probably going to be built earlier on, because that's also where we find the Portos project and part of Aramis on that for the CCS case. And we also have from Neptune Energy, which is now ENI, the Poseidon project that is going to be producing hydrogen from seawater on an offshore platform. In this picture, what you see here is the areas that are being where wind is being developed, and some other areas that might be developed. And you see also the current transport infrastructure and the potential transport in infrastructure that still needs to be built for the Hub West storyline. So once we've done that at this fairly high level, we have then created this action agenda that addresses these various points in there, such as what kind of economic stimuli are necessary to make this work, what kind of business cases need to be sort of created around it, what are the choices that we do in the sense of ecological management, and how do we still foster, collaboration, stakeholder engagement throughout this development. One of the products of this project has been the North Sea Energy Atlas, and it's freely available. I encourage you to go there. It's quite fun to play, so you can kind of sort of play God a little bit and create different sort of integration scenarios. This page here just shows the CCS kind of potential, and these are the 3 hubs. And we also are looking at potential connections to other countries and projects around the North Sea. And so when you sort of layer all of these activities and functions, this is sort of what it looks like in the atlas. And this for me is quite a difficult picture, because that's where you have, so we've got offshore sand production here, we've got military areas there, we've got shipping lanes going through, we have wells and platforms all over the place. And we would like to be able to plan, do the spatial planning with a fair amount of flexibility, because as we've seen quite recently, the world can change quite suddenly, and sometimes priorities change too. So I think for me, this is like one of the big challenges, and sort of just to finish it off, it's going to be important to be able to ensure coexistence between the activities. And I think the best way to have all such a big variety of stakeholders together discussing how to achieve this is actually by building those scenarios and the storylines and sort of blueprints, so that people can start to look at in their own business, where are the opportunities, what kind of planning they're going to have to do. And from my particular perspective, how do we integrate that spatial planning? That link between surface and subsurface is going to become more and more important. I hope that, for instance, coming out of the CCS area, that there is a conversation going on. Those places where CCS is not so favourable to be placed, is that the best place to put our wind farms, for instance? Because if we wanted to use seismic surveys for monitoring CCS, and we have big, large-scale wind farms on top of it, I don't think it's going to be a very easy thing to do. So that was all what I had to say. I hope you are inspired by it. I had promised yesterday.